Okay, he's talking, this is Don Lincoln from Fermilab talking about cold. And he's talking about kids watching this movie. But he started thinking, how cold can you get to? Here he goes.
A gazillion times. But what with me being a scientist and all, this got me to thinking, how cold is cold? Is there a coldest temperature possible? And, if so, how close have scientists gotten to having achieved it?
Okay. Now, he is a scientist. I agree. He's deep into science. Now, I would like to interact because I want to know what is cold. What really is cold? What happens when you get something cold? And he's actually going to explain what cold is. And I can explain it to you. It's very simple. It's absolute zero means there's absolutely no free electrons. You've removed every electron that is free to float around as heat or is even attached loosely because it sucks one right off of helium. Listen, I'll show you. Okay, as always, fair use Roger, and this is government, fair use government copyright laws, and people copyright stuff because they have the intellectual property and they own it, but there are exceptions to being able to use it. And I don't even have to ask them. I can use it, and I always try to say who I got the information from, but fair use and identifies certain types of uses. Criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. That's what I do, scholarship and research. And as examples of activities that may qualify as fair use. So my stuff always does. However, I did get blocked. I got deactivated on Facebook for copyright infringement, and I said no, and then they just blocked me. So I'm off of Facebook for a long time now. But I don't want to get blocked from anywhere because I'm not stealing anything from anybody. I'm doing what is legal. Okay, the only way you can even explain what temperature is to understand electron flood theory, and that electrons are dipoles, and electrons make up everything there is. And an electron consists of a black portion, which is called a muon, and a white portion, which is called an electron neutrino. Between those two, it makes up what we always consider was electron. Nobody ever knew about the black part. That's dark matter. Nobody ever knew about it. Now, these two together make up a photon. All right? And then when you start adding a whole batch of these, at about 1836, they lock in and become stable. That's what they've always considered was a proton, but they always considered a proton just to be just one big hard chunk that they could break like a piece of glass and see how little they could make it. Well, it's not that way. Now they realize, and Don Lincoln I'm sure realizes now, they just put it out the other day, that they can change the shape of the proton. They can stretch them. They're elastic. They're not one big ball. And it's just like this. This is exactly what it is. Now, there's extra electrons, which they call, well, there's extra or not enough electrons. They're isotopes. So they're not stable because they don't have enough exactly to become locked in. That's what you have to understand. There's free-floating electrons. That's heat. They move in and out. They move out of the substance, and they mix with all the rest of them. That's called ambient temperature. That's room temperature. When you bring something real cold in and put it in a room, the electrons, the electrons move into it because they're more adaptive to that cold. The cold says, hey, I'll take some of those. And it says, yeah, we got too many of them here. Yeah, go that way until you just, everybody will chill out. And everybody just turns the same number of excess electrons. When you pull electrons out, that's what you're doing. You're pulling them out. So when you get down to no electrons at all, you're at absolute zero. But even then, you're stripping them off of atoms. Now watch what he says. They're stripping them off. Listen. This again is Fermilab.
At which the Fermilab Tevatron operated until it was decommissioned in 2011. So this is great. We've gotten into single-digit temperatures, but of course 4-ish Kelvin isn't the same as 0. So can we do better? Well, sure. 4.2 Kelvin is the temperature at which helium condenses from gas to liquid. The temperature at which water condenses from gas to liquid is 100 Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit, and we know we can cool water below that temperature. We should be able to get helium colder than the temperature at which it boils. Using the same conceptual tricks that we use to run commercial refrigerators and freezers, we can cool helium more. At CERN, our sister laboratory over in Europe, they've built a huge ring of magnets that is 27 kilometers or 16 plus miles around, down to 1.9 Kelvin. It's hard work, but we can make big things very cold. Using this advanced refrigeration technology, we can get things down to something like 1 Kelvin. 1-ish Kelvin is the lowest temperature you can do on an industrial scale. To go lower, we need to do some new tricks. At such low temperatures, helium does some funny things. For instance, normal helium, like you might find in a party balloon, is called helium-4 because...
Now, this, I'm going to go back a second and we're going to let him speak again. But here is where dipole flood theory has to be taken into consideration. This is helium-4. They say it has 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Well, in dipole flood theory, that consists of 4 times approximately 1836. So let's say it was 2,000. So it's almost 8,000, 7,500 or so particles like this are going to be in that core. And because there's that many of them, a couple more want to get in, but they say, no, you can't get in here. We got enough. We just got plenty, and it coats. In other words, what you're really going to see here would be this. The dark matter, which is the black parts, can go right to the center. They'll go right in the center, and they're coated by the white ones. That's what it really is. And now more of these want to get in, but there's so many white ones on the outside that say, no, you can't get in there. Because the push, you know how magnets push each other, and they want to get in. It wants to get into the core. But the core, whoops, is already surrounded by white. So that's what happens. Now, what he's going to say, well, I'll let him talk, and then I will talk over that again. All right, so here we go. This is Don Lincoln again. He's talking about how helium gets an electron stripped off it.
At such low temperatures, helium does some funny things. For instance, normal helium, like you might find in a party balloon, is called helium-4 because it has 4 particles in the nucleus, 2 protons and 2 neutrons. On the other hand, there is a version of helium called helium-3, which has 2 protons and 1 neutron. Helium-4 can be extracted from natural gas, but helium-3 is rare on Earth. Luckily, it's a byproduct of nuclear power generation.
Now, why is it a byproduct of nuclear power generation? I can tell you why. Because when they hit one of these, they knock off chunks sometimes. And they end up with a smaller chunk, and it's that, helium-3. That's all it is. And nuclear radiation is nothing more than big balls of this stuff flying around, and they're only like parts. That's why you end up from, he says, oh yeah, it's just from nuclear radiation. Well, that's fine. And that's what happens. That's a chunk that's been smashed to bits, and you end up with this. Now, again, these are not big balls of particles. The standard model does not work. Electron flood theory is literally the only thing that does work. And it works perfect. There's not a single thing I can't explain, not one single thing. And I'm going to show you right now that I can show you my particles doing what they want to do at CERN with that 6-mile ring that he just talked about back here, and cooling it down to almost absolute zero, because that's good. They have to do that to get the particles out of the way, doing what they're doing. We did a much easier way. We used the pulse laser to do exactly what they want to do, create muons and electron neutrinos. If I'm wrong, I think somebody should tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. That's exactly what they're trying to do. See, here it is right here, Fermilab. Muon G2 will better understand the properties of the muon, use them to probe the standard model. Well, the standard model doesn't work, so probing it's not going to help. Now, this is actually an article by Don Lincoln back in 2013 where he talks about these two smallest particles they can find, and he says they have, this is what their characteristics are. He says, in summary, the extended particles are the black ones. They have a fixed size, never change, although they may have a fuzzy edge. Point-like particles, which was the little red one, has it's almost no size at all. He says it's zero size, but it has a field, and that's where it has all its energy. All right, so here's the particles. Now, let me show you what we found. Okay, this is what Don Lincoln just showed in his What's the Point Particle article. Point particle article. And this is, like I say, that's from Fermilab. Now, we found those particles using pulsed laser and a Venturi. And this is the Venturi, which accelerated the light, which is not supposed to happen. Light is a particle. That's the particle we saw. And I can show this in extreme detail. And that is the particle that Don Lincoln's found too, but they found them in debris. And they would see one of these and one of these attached, and then they'd see these broken apart. All right? And this is what they would now call a sterile muon, and that is an electron neutrino. But when this separates, it's a sterile muon, and this turns into a shower. So can I show that? Absolutely. Here it is right here. There's when they separate. We saw them attached a minute ago, and here they are separated, and here they are coming back together. So that's fission, that's fusion. That is exactly what they're trying to do at CERN and Fermilab. Here's the muon neutrino, the black one. See the black one? Here's the electron neutrino, the white one, which was a ball, and now it's a shower. And here they come right back together instantaneously. They claim that in this area, the increase in energy is like at least 207 times, and it may be more than that. And this is the event actually occurring. This is the pulsed red laser. This is the acceleration phase. This is the stacking up phase where they slow down because they're slamming into each other, and then the black balls force the white to squirt through. And they come out the other side, and right here they create Higgs fields, and they come back together. And I'll show you that in a second. So here's the separation event. Here's the slamming of pushing them through this very, very tiny orifice. Hold on, let me just draw it. All right, that's all we did. This is pulsed red laser. And green, blue, it doesn't matter. It all works the same way. They all have that black ball, just like Don Lincoln said, and they all have a fixed particle with a glow around it. And the red is very weak. Then you have green, much more powerful. Then blue is on steroids. This Venturi forces these particles to come together and crush their fields, just like they're doing head-on at CERN. We're doing it sideways. And when it does, it throws the black balls out of the way if the Venturi is the right dimensions. And it comes through here. Only the white can come through. Only the white. There's not a single taste of black in here. None. Zero. And then when they come back together, they create these elegant, elegant, elegant patterns. And I can actually, well, you can see this right now. You see them come apart. You saw they were attached. There they are right there. That happens just before they hit the Venturi. And right there at the Venturi, they separate. And you got an explosion going on here. And the black ones just get out of the way. And these pick up over here. Now, I don't know whether there's extra black ones just laying around waiting to jump in. I don't know how that exactly happens. But they create Higgs fields out here, which are just amazing, gorgeous little fields. And this is just light. So we have made the muons, the muon neutrino made it muons, electron neutrinos made the electron showers. I don't see any way you can miss that. Okay, I actually do understand how they missed everything because they're trying to stick with the standard model. It doesn't work. Let's just take a look at my model. I'm showing these particles. And well, let me show you some other quick things just to beef it up a little bit. All right. These particles here, the red is just dim looking. The green is much more explosive, and it's pushing the red out of the way. They're coming through the same slit at the same time. We only use a single slit, so one's on top of the other, and they're coming straight through at the same time. And the green is just pushing the red out of the way, and it's barrel rolling it. You see them? They're barrel rolling here, because they shouldn't ever barrel roll. They should only spin this way with the polarity against the Earth. This is the wrong way. And that's because this one here, its pushy particle is pushing against this one's pushy particle. This one's going too slow, so they hit and they just start to roll. That's what happened here. And then the green comes back in and reconcusses way the hell out there. All right, there's wave-particle duality right there. You saw the particle. It's right in here. And as it comes through, its white glowy part is pushing every other white glowy part in the air, because every particle there is has white glowy parts. You come banging against it, and you light them up. That's why you see light. You're banging and pushing against it. It's push to shove. And they never roll this way. They always turn this way. And the reason they turn is the one that's forward will charge up, and it'll get real big, and the other one gets real small, and then it'll go whoop. And then this little one will be in front, and it'll charge up, and then it'll go whoop. That's how come they call that the muon wobble. So this is wave particle, which is the field. I'm sorry, the particle is the particle I just showed you. The wave is the magnetic field that surrounds that particle. That's all it is. That's wave-particle duality. All right, I know you've seen this, but I want to demonstrate a little deeper details here. This is literally a nuclear explosion. This is a subatomic explosion. The particles are separating. Fission and fusion is happening there. That's what an atomic bomb does, fission and fusion. All right, we're doing it at the subatomic level. They're doing it at the macro atomic level. So again, this is the particle making the field, accelerating, and then banging into each other up here, causing this violent interaction at the venturi and only allowing the white to come through. Fission, fusion. What happens at the fusion? Can I demonstrate and show you what happens? I absolutely can. Now, what is this right here? Let's look over here with a little more detail. What are all those lines going back this way? That's called reverse EMF, electromotive force. And where is that electromotive force emanating from? Right there, from an explosive interaction right here. Coming back. All of these fields are light particles that are in the air. You never see them. You would never see those, except it's the radiation backwards that's making them manifest. Back here you don't see them. They're coming. They're back here, but you're never going to see them until you can concuss hard enough. Just like this. You wouldn't see this either until it started to accelerate. That's why we're seeing these fields. Now remember, the only one you're going to ever see is the field that's directly in line with the venturi. Directly. These are all here. You're never going to see them until they have enough interaction that they glow. And that's what you're seeing there. Now, this is a fairly recent revelation that neutrinos go slower than the speed of light. I was thinking they are going faster than the speed of light because I could see them accelerate. I was watching them literally. If you couldn't see them accelerate, I don't know what they were doing. Now, the problem is, though, just before they break through the venturi, and only the ones exactly in line with the venturi, only those, just before they break through the venturi, they slow down because they're being backed up. Bam, 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 bam. These are backing up a little tiny bit too. Because as I showed you before, they're everywhere. Light particles are everywhere, but they're just not in this plane with the venturi. So what would you have to do? You'd have to put maybe bazillions of venturis maybe. You could hit this with a heavy-duty, huge laser and really hit the whole thing, because I know they're coming. Like, see that? That's a particle, that's a particle. This particle became this particle. As they stack up, they push back against themselves, and they manifest exactly what they are, which is two of the electrons back to back, and an electron consists of one white and one black particle together. Now there's the green, same particle, and here's what happens. Light spins. It orientates towards the Earth, but it still spins. Now this one here is just getting ready to flip. Remember I talked about the muon wobble, how they charge up the leading one and then it flips. All right, and then the back one will go in front, and the red ones do the same thing. Well, they all do the same thing. This is the spin of light, and it spins just like this. And remember I showed you they're all over the place, but the main one coming through here is the most intense. Now, what happens? Why are these out here and why are they over here? And why does it look like this? Here's why. It's spinning, so some are hitting here and not getting through, and some are going over the other side and getting through and coming out this way. So you got them spinning out this way, and you got them spinning over that way, and most of them are coming through the center, but they go all over the place here. All right, that's why you see some go that way, and they come out from the other side and go this way. They come over the top and go that way. That's the spin of light, and I can show that in a million different ways, and if you can't see it there, I don't know what a spin is. All right, the blue it comes in hot. I mean hot. You can't even tell that there's two white particles there. They're bunched right up together. And you see it drifting to the left. It's spinning to the right. And that means you see the particle over to the left, because this is a snapshot of the same particle, just in its trajectory, tight here, loosened up here, and here we can just barely see the two particles of the white particles that are together. These are spinning little particles, the same thing, spinning. I don't know which way they're spinning, but they're spinning. And anytime you see a glow, it means you have an interaction of a bundle of them sort of interacting with each other. They don't want to be next to each other. You push, it shoves. You do that, you get glow. Alright, if this doesn't blow your mind, nothing will. We are looking directly into the Venturi, and the light is coming out at us. All we have here is white. There is no black particles here. There's none. What happens here? The black particles attach here. These are black particles becoming attached. They call them Higgs fields. Now, the white interacts with black particles, and I can actually show you them interacting and reattaching right out here. But in the meantime, here we are in a void of whiteness. All it is whiteness here until you hit these black particles. Now let's see if I can actually show you that, and I can actually show you that. Okay, here's the whole shooting match in one picture. I showed you those white particles coming out, and these are the fields that the black particles attached to the white. And this was all of that interaction showing the whole thing. Well, this is the black attaching to the white. The ones behind here, trailing behind, haven't quite caught up and smashed into the black yet, only the tips. You see the tips these are the tips. And there's a couple of them down in here that have caught up with black and turned into another with the particle that they should be, which is a black and a white. But all the tips do it at the same time. And that is from this. This is real. This is real from that. Fabian Boulez did the enhancements of this. Rod Warren did the actual experiments of literally all of these pictures. Fabian did some. I did some, but mine are worthless. Rod is the guy. Rod spent a lot of time, and I call this the Warren effect. That's the Warren effect, which creates muons and electron showers. And here they are right there. And this is the reattachment. This is fusion actually happening right in front of your eyes. Okay, this is about the most elegant pattern I've ever seen, and this is exactly demonstrates push to shove, which means every field will push away from every other field equally when you get down to this subatomic level, because they all have the same charge. So they push equally, and they form these absolutely elegant patterns. And you can see them spinning. I showed you the light spins. This is what it does. It spins. Now, in the meantime, as it's spinning, it's reattaching here at the leading tip. All right, let's home in on it. Okay, you know, I always say, oh, at the leading tip. Well, who knows what that means? Here's what it does mean. You see these fields? That's the leading tip of that field. That's what we're going to see with those little particles. And they're all over here. They have the same leading tip, which means that's the part that's interacting. And it's like a bubble as it comes through the air. And those are the first ones to reattach. And then from behind, you see how they're glowing more from behind? These are starting to come down to their normal state. These are still very, very glowy from behind, and they will additionally come down to just the black and white particles as I just showed you. By the way, you see this? That's I don't know if you can see that or not. The Samsung right here? That's the phone that we use to take these shots with. Hold on a second, I got one right here. I don't think you can see that one. This is it right here. I did all the same stuff Rod did, but only he's good. Alright, this is a Galaxy S3. Now, the selfie side is the one he used. He said it because I must have a better pixelation and so forth. But he said this was the best phone he ever had to do this work, Galaxy S3. Now this goes back to 2014, I think, or so, and they found that this particular CMOS that they were using at this time was as good as anything that anybody could have just to pick up on these extremely high energy particles. And they're still using them now as cosmic ray detectors. And that's what this is. These cosmic rays are muons. That's all they are. That's what a muon. If a muon is a muon, then those are muons that were created. I mean, you have a hard time arguing this. They say muon neutrinos turns into a sterile muon when the electron neutrino turns into electron showers. That's exactly what we did. We split them and then brought them back together. And we can see them in every phase. We can see them split, we can see them alone, we can see them coming back together. And we can see the black balls all by themselves, as you can see right here. And the black balls do not care about being on top of each other because they are gravity. The white particles hate each other, and they just want to go in, shower, and push you away. And turn into enormous amounts of energy. Huge amounts of energy. Now, this, I can't believe we could do this, but maybe, who the hell knows? Visible light only takes 1.5 to 3.5 electron volts. Electron volts are a unit of energy, and it's a very small amount. As you come up you get into alpha radiation, which will kill you. It's only 2 to 10 million electron volts. So it's very energetic, 2 to 10 million versus 1.5 to 3.5. It's 2 to 10 million times more. Well, guess what? Cosmic ray energy, which is muons, goes up to this teravolts, the trillion volts. It's in between this 1 megabyte and 1 mega electron volts and a trillion electron volts. So it might be less than alpha, but it's still a hell of a lot more than what it takes to create that energy. If you're using visible light, you're almost nothing. If you're using something that ionizing hydrogen atoms and everything, and energy to use color television, 20,000, and you're going to get at least 1 million, that's a hell of a lot more energy. So I think we can get free energy, and we can harvest it right here with this device, and things are right off the shelf. You can pick them up today if you needed to and do research. Lasers, dime a dozen. solar collectors, dime a dozen, only we can make special ones using these new materials. They're like light emitting diodes, only they're photo receiving diodes. And I've shown this. You can take and shine a laser, it's got to be at least a green or up, onto a light emitting diode, and it will turn it into it produces energy, 2.5 volts. I've shown it over and over and over. You take green and put it into that solar cell, little tiny thing, a light emitting diode, and boop, 2.5 volts. So we should be able to get a ton of energy and carry that around in a lunchbox. If this is anywhere near right, it's just astounding. And they say it's at least 207 times more energy than once you can create a muon. Those are their words, not mine. See, this goes back to 2014. They were using smartphones to track cosmic rays. Now, you saw it started down around 1 million electron volts and way up to tera electron volts, trillions. Well, obviously, because just as I showed you, red is not as energetic as green, and blue is, for me, off the charts, and there's probably more than that. And then there's going to be specific, really good head-on interactions, and maybe hitting dust particles or gases or whatever. But the point I'm making is we created muons. So if they start the muons, which is cosmic radiation, at 1 million electron volts, we got a hell of a lot of extra energy. And what I'm getting at here, though, is they're using these, they're still using them today, smartphones, to track cosmic rays. They say they're just as good as anything anybody's got, CERN, Fermilab, I don't care who they are. What we're using picks it up just as good. It's called CMOS, complementary metal oxide silicates. They receive these high energy particles, focus them in onto these pixels, you get huge, perfect, exquisite, pictures because of the huge amount of radiation. That's the key. If you don't have much radiation, you're not going to see anything. That's why I showed you up in the back. You don't see all those particles. The only ones you see are the ones that are getting highlighted because they're glowing. I don't know about you, but I'd like to see some free energy. And this is dirt cheap. Absolutely dirt cheap. And the construction time to put this together would be days. All we're doing is focusing in on a Venturi. And if we can get more energy out of here than it took to turn that sucker on, we're golden. And they say it's at least 207 times. That means 5 watts would give you 1,000 over here. We may only be able to harvest 200. Who cares? If it's 5 and we get 200, that's not too bad. All we got to do is take 5 to keep that thing going, and we got 195 to charge our batteries, run cars, heat our house, pump water, run lights for growing food. I tell you, this is the only solution we have is free energy. And that right there is absolutely free. Once you build it, it just keeps going. That's just the way it would work. You'd never have to do a damn thing to it, if it worked right. And even if you did, who the hell cares? You throw it away and buy another one. You're not talking a whole lot of money here. Not at all. And that is cold fusion. Okay, so you have to understand what particles are made of, and I just showed you what they're made of. Now, he's talking about how cold can you get. I'm talking about what is actually happening to make things cold. I'm going to tell you right now, the colder something gets, the lighter it gets. You say, oh, no. When something gets hot, it floats, it gets higher. No, just the opposite. When it gets hot, it gets heavier. Now, if it's in a gaseous form, it expands, so you're taking up more space, same number of particles, yes, goes up. But if you heat an item like this, and it gets hot, it weighs more than when it's cold, because it has absorbed electrons, and electrons have a weight to them. All right, 1,836 electrons, which is heat, forced into this matrix so that they're all sort of in there trying to get each other's position. So it's hot now. You feel it, it's warm. There's 1836 in everywhere there's a proton, should be. And then you flood a whole bunch of extra ones in there, and instead of 1836, you got another 100,000. And they weigh, and for every 1836 is one atomic mass unit. It's almost nothing. But if you have enough atomic mass units, you get some perceptible weight. And that means the hotter it gets, the heavier it gets. And I can prove that not only it's well known, but I had an encounter with the Weights and Measures Department where I was certifying weights, and I had to leave them overnight, and I had to, not that I didn't have a confrontation with the guy, but I said, well, why should I have to leave them overnight? And he says, because they have to become room temperature. I said, why is that right? Well, why is that? And he says, because they won't weigh right. And this has always bothered me, because he said, well, they think it's the air goes around and da-da-da. No, it has to be have the same number of electrons. Nobody wants to give, nobody wants to take, and then you end up having the correct weight. And then they seal the weights, and I had a regular lead seal that I would seal when I went into like a grocery store and certified their equipment. So I know this for a fact. Electrons have a weight, and electrons are heat. All right, they know this is true. It will weigh more, yes. They will weigh more, but not by much. Heat is a measure of the kinetic energy of the atoms or molecules. If an object is heated, the energy is higher, so the object will weigh slightly more. Well, it's because it's taken on electrons. When they go out, they leave. They just leave. And they move to a place that will take them, and they won't be pushing and shoving. If you have one that is hot, it's going to push the cold. And the cold will suck the hot in. It's a give and take. All right, so anyway, that's my take on heat and light and the atomic structure. And we saw the particles, we saw them divide, we saw them come back together. If we can intervene and just suck up all that white, really juice, we should be able to really do something to help save the world. All right, that's cold fusion and fission and fusion. And that's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned, and we should be able to carry that around in a lunchbox.